Egypt's young democracy faces a new test today as voters cast ballots in the second round of parliamentary elections. 59 seats in the lower house of parliament are at stake. Turnout is reportedly lower today than it was in the first round. The election comes at a delicate time for Egypt. 14 people have been killed since Friday in clashes in Cairo. Egyptian protesters, meanwhile, are calling for a huge rally Friday in Cairo's Tahrir Square. CNN's Mohammed Jamjoon is covering the latest developments in Cairo. Tell us more about this particular protest rally that's been called for Friday.
Well, Fanula, considering all the anger that we've seen the past several days in Tahrir Square, it's no surprise the groups are calling for a huge rally on Friday. The concern right now is, will the rally remain peaceful or will clashes erupt yet again? Today has been largely free of clashes, of violence. It's the first day in the last 6 days that there have been no clashes between security forces and between protesters here in Tahrir Square and the surrounding areas. But again, Friday looks like it could be a very big rally, considering the tensions on the street. A lot of real big concern right now that it could turn violent if indeed that many people gather and if the security forces are out as well.
And just a quick question about the composition of the protests who are calling for this rally. Who are they? Are they political parties? Are they young people? Are they women?
Well, it's a coalition. It's a lot of different groups, Fanula. The revolutionary groups, the people who usually call for these protests that happen on Friday. You are seeing more women calling for these protests. Yesterday, there was a demonstration in which women marched around Tahrir Square because women right now are outraged at the treatment of Egyptian female protesters, the beatings that they've been sustaining the past several days at the hands of riot police and other security forces here, especially in Tahrir Square. That's engendered a lot of outrage. Every time the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces talks about, trying to make the situation better, it doesn't really seem to matter. There's a lot of anger being directed right now by these revolutionary groups towards the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, saying they need to step aside, that a civilian government needs to come into place as quickly as possible. Presidential elections need to happen. And yet the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, they've been blaming the violence that's been happening on the protesters. That's not sitting well with the protesters. It seems to be an unending cycle. And even though today, again, was free of clashes, the concern is come Friday, if huge groups gather and they are as angry as they have been in recent days, it could turn ugly quite quickly. Fanula?
You went earlier in the day to a hospital to film a woman who had agreed to speak to CNN, who had been injured in the violence in Tahrir Square, beaten up as it were. And while you tell us about this, can you also address perhaps whether there's any hope of a dialogue that will be sustained by both the military council and the protesters, or will it be this endless cycle as you described?
Fanula, we had scheduled a time earlier today to speak with a woman named Azza Hilal Suleiman. She's a female protester who had been beaten quite severely, and her beating had been caught on tape this past Saturday. When we went to see her, even though we were given access to her by her family, it was a horrific scene in that hospital room. She was clearly in agony in her hospital bed, screaming at the top of her lungs, saying that she believed she was going to die and that she needed help. Doctors said that she might be transferred to the ICU. We saw abrasions on her face, lots of bruises. Her head was bandaged. We were told that she had sustained a skull fracture. It was all really quite horrific. We're trying to find out more about her to see what her condition is now, but we've not been able to speak to her family since we left the hospital. Now, if I can just walk you back a few days before that, last Saturday, when the beating that she sustained took place, we have video of that. It shows her actually walking up to another woman who was beaten, trying to help her up. The riot police converged upon her, started clubbing her. She hits the ground. She sustains multiple clubbing beatings to the head. It's amazing that she could have survived this. It was really quite shocking, and it's a very disturbing video, and it's just another video here that's causing so much outrage. As to your question about if a dialogue can be sustained, we just don't know at this point. The Supreme Council of the Armed Forces Women's March that happened yesterday issued a statement in which they expressed regret for violations against Egyptian women. But that doesn't seem to be holding much water with women activists here and other activists who say that the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces are lying, that they've really taken Egypt backwards, that they need to be replaced. A civilian government needs to be put into place as quickly as possible. And these women that have been coming out seem to be emboldened and encouraged to come out even more. They don't seem to be scared at all. and they want to continue to press their case and make sure that they are protected and not suffering abuse at the hands of the riot police any further. Fanula?
All right, Mohammed Jamjoon, thanks very much indeed, reporting there live from Cairo. Well, to the UK now, where